Well, good evening. Thanks for being with us here at the Time for Truth Ministries. As we go into, I've lost track of time already. Whether it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we've been in this quarantine, this self-imposed isolation. But from what we're reading, right, we may be faced with another month of this, another 4 weeks of this. So what would it be all total here, at least here in New York? 6 weeks, 7 weeks? Very unusual, very different times that we live in now than certainly we've been used to. And as I made mention several times, they're unique. I mean, what's happening right now is unique in world history. We're really living in some very, very, very unique times. Anyway, welcome to the Time for Truth once again. I'm here with my cameraman and a prayer warrior. There's just 3 of us. We are very far apart from each other, keeping social distancing. Not that you can get too close anyway, but you know what, it makes you wonder how things will be once whoever is the one, presumably here is going to be our president, but whoever is the one who's going to say you're good to go back outside. And my thoughts have been from the beginning, will life truly be the same? Well, that remains to be seen. But here we are. And by the way, I wanted to thank so many of you who took the time to make comments and write to me about the little music videos, the couple that I've done so far. It's the hallway that I sing from is right over here through the door. I told you the acoustics in that hallway are really good. Reminding me of when I sang many years ago alone on the theater of Red Rocks Theater in Colorado. It has a natural sound that it just produces. And I would sing often out there before, after a church service when everybody was gone. I would just, or sometimes before, I would be practicing, rehearsing something, and I would sing in that hallway. And one of the men who used to be in our choir would do the same thing. We both recognized it had a great resonance that you can't really get without technology. So I do thank you. I do plan on doing more of those music videos since it was something, number one, I had planned for this last portion of my life anyway, dedicate myself to going back to music I did many, many years ago, including writing. And then the other side of it was that with your encouragement, so many of you saying the very things that were on my mind, I do plan on continuing to do that. I just don't know exactly what days I'll pick when I do it. I do know some of the other songs I want to sing. And, to bridge over to the thought of us being sequestered the way we are, it makes for, well, I've heard the term used by others who are doing it, for virtual worship. And some have told me that, when I was singing, they were actually worshiping the Lord. So it has its purpose. And once we're let loose again, I'll continue to do that because, as I said, it was something that was in my goals for this last period of my life anyway. So here we are. Tonight is Wednesday night. It's our usual Bible study. And in a conversation I just had a few minutes ago with my very, very close friend and elder, I was saying this, and I've said it before, but I'm so glad I've spent, really, you could say all, because it is just about all of my adult life studying the Bible. what you could consider either a bibliophile or a Bibleaholic, but I've always had this natural affinity towards the Bible. I've always been a reader as well, but I've always had this affinity towards the Bible that I can't really explain. I have several books in my library that I've read more than once. And some you could say that I've studied. I don't mean the technical books. Most of my books are nonfiction in my library. But there's something about the Bible, for me, that has always been, there's always been an attraction. And wherever I open it, could be on genealogies, doesn't matter. I always get this sense of peace and a sense of purpose as well. And you know, during this time that we live in, we hear in our church, and I know we're praying along with millions of others in the country and around the world, we are praying for, and we have been for quite some time, for a national revival, Christian, of the church being brought back to its purpose, which it's lost. I don't mean one denomination versus another. I mean just in general. This is what I do. This is my calling. I was going to say this is what I do for a living, but it's not really a living. I could have did a lot of things that would be easier and more lucrative for a living than ministry. But I research, and not just the Bible, but things that relate to the Bible. And so we've been praying for quite some time now. And I'll put it to you this way. I'll tell you the story. So many churches, in order to accommodate, and that's not really the right word either, in order to, well, I'll have to stick with the word accommodate, to accommodate people, they kept making their services shorter and shorter, promising people, hey, we're going to get you out of here quick. And in my mind, not that there's something special about a long service anyway, but in my mind, it just was, or is, a convenience that fits into an American lifestyle in particular, that is not, in my opinion, very healthy. I've made mention to you on these broadcasts that gone are the days when we could sit on a stoop and just sit and talk. I mean, what did we talk about back in those days? Didn't amount to much, but it was what people did. They socialized. Funny that that's been taken away from us now, even if it's only temporary, been taken away from us. And as you know, human beings are, by nature, social creatures. Not everybody wants to be in the crowd, but we want at least one person that we can talk to and have some conversation with. Anyway, in my opinion, as Americans, we just live too fast. We try to accomplish too much in such a short period of time. There's always this long laundry list of things to do. And when I thought about it, and I'm speaking for myself, and over the years, so often I would say, Lord, I just want to do what really counts. And aside from the obvious, which would be, seeking Christ, spending time with people. I love talking. I always did. Comes natural for me. I don't mean talking from a platform. I mean just making conversation. I enjoy being sociable. But, when we look at our life, and I'm speaking to Americans, we see that it's just a constant hustle, a constant rush. And if you take the time to think about it, actually take the time. And think about just where am I going and why am I rushing all the time? Well, we now have opportunity during this time out that we have, and we're forced to stay at home, and that's in a manner of speaking. It gives us the opportunity to really reflect on life, reflect on our lives. What are we doing? Kind of like a reset button. Now, we do expect to be released from this captivity by the end of the month, hopefully. In any case, we do expect to be released from this captivity that we're in at the moment. But what will you do once we get back to, quote, normal? I don't know, as I just said, how much our lives will be normal around the world. After this is over, if it's ever over. But I think that you need to reflect on where has your life been up to this point? What have you been accomplishing that really counts? And of course, as a preacher, I'm going to tell you what counts for eternity. But even besides eternity, just what really counts in life? What's important? Family's important. Friends are important. Those are two things that I could give you that should be on the list, but for many, many people, there's just no time. In fact, it's funny, I used this illustration some months ago in a message. It was about a woman who was a immigrant to our country, and she was only learning the English language. And when the man who sponsored her, brought her over here, would call her up and say, "Hello, how are you doing?" her response was always busy, very busy. And they would talk, and that was it. And that was her response every time that she answered the phone. "Hello, how you doing?" "I'm busy, very busy, very busy." And it turns out that as she was learning the English language and speaking to Americans, speaking to people, that what was happening was that this is what she was hearing every time that she said, "Oh, hello, how are you doing?" And that was a very common response from the people that she met as she was learning English. So that's what she thought that we say, that's part of our language, when obviously it's not part of everybody's language. And so for some of us here in the church, it became like a little joke. "How you doing?" "No, busy, very busy." Well, for me, I have never liked that type of life, even though in ministry, along with having had 5 children, now we have almost 10, we will have 10 grandchildren come July, probably 11 by the end of the year. And you know, that type of busy doesn't bother me. I love my family, and I love my grandchildren, my wife as well. My mom is with us. That's a little different than just being constantly occupied and rushing around, a rush sickness. And what I'm aiming at here is, okay, so now you're sequestered, now you're in a timeout, now you're in a lockdown, now you're isolated, you're sequestered. It's a good time to reflect on where will you go from here if you can look back and see clearly that a lot of things in your life should be taken out. There's no need for these things anymore. As a matter of fact, I'll use this biblical story to bridge into tonight's study, which is a lesson that we learn, or hopefully we learn, from the life of Martha and Mary, 2 sisters. They had a brother Lazarus also, who Jesus raised from the dead. But when Jesus went to visit the home, these 2 sisters were very different. And as Jesus came with the apostles, and there's all types of people, no doubt, always crowding around Jesus. That's the busy part of ministry and life in Christ, life in the Spirit. Martha was just very concerned all the time and serving everybody and making sure, you know, they had this and they had that and they had this and they had that. And Mary sat at Jesus' feet. And now let me say it in the American context. Martha's doing all the work and Mary's doing nothing. And this actually was what she was thinking, because Martha went to Jesus and she said to him, she said, "Lord, don't you care?" And I'm paraphrasing it now. "Don't you care that I'm doing all the work and my sister, she isn't doing anything? I mean, you're in my home." And this is what Jesus said. And again, I want to colloquialize it so it's clearly understood. Jesus said, "Martha, Martha, you're anxious and you're troubled about many things." He said, "But Mary has chosen," and this is a paraphrase, "Mary has chosen the most important thing." It was a mild reproof from Jesus about Martha's behavior, her manner, and what she was doing when Christ was in the house, when Jesus was in the house. Mary sat and she was learning from Jesus. And Jesus said that that was the most important thing, was the most critical thing, that the rest, well, at the very least, can be pared down a little bit, or it could be not done at all, as long as we have the most important thing in life, that's seeking after Christ, seeking after God. Now, in this series of messages and these teachings on Wednesdays as well, I have been talking about the overarching theme as we see our signs, message on eschatology, the study of Bible prophecy concerning the last days. And the subtitle has been for some weeks now, Coronavirus, Panic, and the Promises of God. What I want to concentrate on tonight, though, is just simply that word panic and broaden it a bit, and in the hopes that I can help you to find what I discovered many, many years ago, that the only real peace in life is found in Christ. So if you're looking for peace, and again, who isn't, make sure you're not looking in all the wrong places. I have a verse for you. I'm going to read it in just a minute. But you can be looking for peace and you just can't seem to get it, can't seem to obtain it. As you know, we live in stressful times. And now we have this virus that, and I consider myself reasonably intelligent. And I read a lot. But you know what? I really can't read much more about this coronavirus until they start to tell us something substantial. I realize we got to take precautions, but to be honest, I don't even know what I'm taking precautions against. I mean, beyond the obvious. I don't want to get sick. I don't like having the flu, and they say, Anthony Fauci says that this is 10 times worse than the flu. Well, I don't want that, so we take precautions. But is it, just what is it? So they're working on that, at least we hope they are. And hopefully they'll be able to tell us, and hopefully God will have mercy on us, and we can not only be free again to go out and roam the earth, but in the meantime, that God would grant us what we've been praying for here, which is national revival or a third Great Awakening. You have to look this up in your history book. What was the first Great Awakening? What was the second Great Awakening? And what they were was tremendous moves here in America. Other countries, of course, have had them too. Of God's Spirit, where people went back to church and came to Christ and were born again, as Jesus says, you must be born again in the Gospel of John. So I forgot to finish this one thought. Let me just quickly give it to you. With the churches so many, saying, hey, we'll get you in and out, we'll make everything quick and easy. Well, first of all, there's nothing easy about following Christ when he says, if you want to follow me, you have to take up your cross and follow me. Well, I always say that I didn't write the Bible, God did, and the men that he used. But that's what it says, and that's what I believe, and I have learned. I question a lot and pray and ask questions, but I don't contradict. I'm not going to find myself in the position of contradicting Jesus, telling him he's wrong. Never have done it, I'm not going to start. What we did in our service, though, I said one day, if we're really in the end times, as the Bible talks about, and if Jesus were here sitting on the other side of the desk, I was in my office at the time, and I were to ask him, Lord, how do you want me to conduct the services? Well, I already knew what the answer would be, and it certainly wouldn't be get them in and out as quick as they can so they can get back to their busy, very busy lives. I knew that wouldn't be the answer. So what we did is we added a half an hour of prayer, 30 minutes of prayer, that begins the service. So our services start at 10 a.m. Well, the prayer meeting begins at 9:45 and goes into the service to 10:15. So we have a half an hour of prayer. Then we have communion. We have communion every week. Many Protestant churches don't, but we do. We have communion every single week. After communion, we have our worship service. We sing, obviously. Congregation sings. And, we spend some good time quality time doing that. Approximately half an hour of singing, some announcements. Then we have our young people, children of all ages, well, up to a certain age, but they're basically children. Some are a little bit older. And they go downstairs, and they have their children's church while the adults remain upstairs here. And we preach more on an adult level, and obviously they have their lessons on more of a child's level. So then they're prayed for here, right in front of the pulpit. Pray for the blessing on the teachers and on them and so forth. And then I preach for an hour, just like I do with the Bible study. 1 whole hour. I once looked up this statistic about preaching, and only 1% of and this is the Christian population, not just Americans, only 1% of the population want any preacher to preach for an hour. Well, to begin with, the Puritans measured a preacher's ability to teach and his knowledge of the Bible by how long could he preach. And that's not, again, immortalizing your sermons by making them everlasting. But there's something to be said that this is the Martha and the Mary situation. There's something to be said about what is our priority in life. What is your priority? For me, it's always been God. And I'm not looking, and I say this with respect to people's time and other considerations, but I'm not now and never have been looking to please people. I'm looking to please God. And the people that I pastor are really great, and they come out, for 2.5 hours. And people, they're always asking, how can you spend so much time in church? Well, listen, this is the Word of God. So we pray and we have communion as we're instructed in the Bible, and we're instructed by Christ. And we have prayer for the children, and they have their time. It's an hour downstairs with their lessons on all their different levels, their ages. And then the adults are taught up here, and then we close in prayer. And before you know it, we have 2.5 hours gone by. And again, it's not to put a premium on the longer services, the better it is. It's just that priorities. Seeking God. Jesus said in Matthew 6:33, he said, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And again, this is a paraphrase. And everything else that you need in this life will be given to you. It will be added to you. But seek God first. Seek Christ first. Well, we have a virus that we don't know much about. At least not much is being told to us, but they're working on it. That's how I summarize what I've read, and I've read a lot. Then we come to this idea of prioritization. We come to this idea of panic. One of the things that I object to when it comes to the media, and there's probably a few other things I could mention. Doctors are not supposed to instill fear into their patients. For instance, the old school medical doctors wouldn't discuss a patient's status, not only in front of other people, other than the people involved, doctors and nurses and so forth, but in front of the patient. They wouldn't sit there and guess and think out loud, frightening the patient. The media, just by nature of the way it operates, often injects into things, other stories beyond this one too, this element of fear. You see, because, and it's so ironic that people are more attracted to that. It's more of something that you talk about when you're giving either a subtle innuendo, or I read a couple of headlines from this past week. Dr. So-and-so, medical doctor, gives grim analysis. Well, that grabs your attention. For me, to be truthful with you, it upsets me. I wouldn't read the article on purpose because they made the headline that it was a grim report. When you start to read after the headline, usually the article changes. It's meant to grab you. Or as they say in journalism, if it bleeds, it leads. Human nature gravitates to these things. So the question is, in the times in which we live, and as we're released from captivity, we go back to, quote, normal, whatever that is. What will your priorities be? Will they change? If you've not been seeking God first, and notice the operative word is first, not just seeking Him first, and then everything would be added to you as the promise of Jesus, then just what is your priority in life? So now I want to speak to you who suffer from, even before this crisis, from chronic anxiety and panic attacks and everything that goes along with what is basically fear. Right? Panic attacks, anxiety, and so on is basically fear, a fear of something, fear of many things. Now, when we add to it this present situation that we're in, we have my title, Coronavirus Panic. And I think that there are people out there who are feeding that fear. Let me give you this bit of advice before I turn to these scriptures that I have for you tonight. If anything's going to kill you, it's going to be your emotions, especially. In other words, if you're living your whole life afraid that you're going to have a heart attack and die, you've wasted all the good life in between. Even if you did, God forbid, have a heart attack and die from one, worrying about it didn't change it, and it's clear from the evidence, scientific, medical science, and people who are in that field, that fear is not curing it, but making it worse. So how do we get released from fear? And I've quoted this verse for you, but let me give it to you again. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7 says, "For God had not given us," now that's speaking specifically of people who have been born again, Jesus' definition of a Christian, not anybody else's. And for me, I only want Jesus' definition, not anybody else's. The Apostle Paul wrote to Timothy because he had a kind of a fearful spirit and could be timid. He said, "For God hath not given unto us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." 2 Timothy 1:7. So I want to talk to you about panic. And the first verse that I want to read to you is from the Gospel according to St. John. In chapter 14, as Jesus is speaking to the apostles, if you have a red lettering edition of the Bible, you'll see that these words are in red. And he says many things. You have to just take the time and read it. But he says this, in verse 27 of the Gospel according to John, chapter 14, Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you." Now he's going to go away for this period of time, the ascension. Jesus will return, the second coming, Advent, second Advent. But he says, "I'm leaving you peace. Peace I leave with you." Then this is what I've always enjoyed about this verse. It's the personal pronoun, "my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." Now there's an entire message just in that verse. Let's take a look at it. First of all, peace. Jesus says, I'm not giving you, well, first of all, I'm not giving you just any kind of peace. I'm giving you the type of peace that I myself enjoy, or that I have, that's inside me. All right, that's the Spirit of God in the Son of God that comes from the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. He says, I'm leaving behind my peace for you. Now, look at, when I, and some of you who are watching who knew me way back when, as kids, teenagers, early 20s. And they never knew my story, and some who have friended me on Facebook over the years never knew what became of me. Were astonished that I was a minister, basically based on what you knew in the past. And they were just flabbergasted. One person wrote to me, had asked me twice, is this the same person, the Ray Barnett that I'm looking for? And I said, yeah, who'd have guessed it? I became a minister almost 43 years now. But why? Why? Well, I sought for God. I knew God was the answer, so that much was a given. But based on what I had learned and been taught, I didn't associate it with the church. So I looked into Eastern religions, I looked into other things and practiced them. Practiced a few of them. Transcendental meditation, I practiced yoga. And whatever I've done in my life, I've always gave it 100%. But I'm telling you the truth. And I was diligent about the things that I did. The peace wasn't there. Temporary, maybe, little, respite. But when I came to the gospel, and when it was presented to me, I've told you this story just Sunday, but when I began to read the Bible, there it was. So what I signed on for originally, but it's still holding true many, many, many years later, was for peace. That's really all I wanted. I wanted just the torment to leave my mind. I wanted the chaos. Now I'm talking about inwardly, not outwardly. You never change that. I wanted the chaos that was in my mind, these scrambled thoughts and on and on. And when Christ came into my heart, and Christ came into my life, there was truly, in a moment, a sense of a peace. You could say it felt like it was just washing over me. Can't really explain it. I can't really put it into words, but if you go on the website and look at my testimony, you can hear it. It's a very old one. I did about 25 years ago. I need to redo it, but there's more of the story, my story, in there. Anyway, I could say it was sort of like a washing, just a warm sense, this comfort that I had never experienced before up to that point. And that's what I was pursuing. I shared the gospel with a friend of mine years ago, and I was just telling him all these different things about the Bible and what it says, and on all these subjects, including the end times. And he said to me, I don't really care about all those things. He said, all I want is peace. And that really spoke to me, because when I first came to Christ, that's all I was looking for as well. I didn't know anything about the Bible at the time, but I just wanted peace. I wanted peace in my heart, peace in my life. Now listen to me. Panic, as at least a form of it, has taken a grip on almost the entire globe. Here in New York City now becoming the epicenter of this virus, people are getting panicky. Well, we see hospitals being set up to take care of all these casualties that we're reading about, and the many hundreds of thousands of people that are going to die as they tell us. Now, whether that actually turns out to be, we'll have to see. Again, I'm taking precautions. We all are taking precautions, but I'll tell you one thing I'm not going to do. I'm not going to live the rest of my days afraid of it. I'm not going to waste it. For instance, if I was to catch this virus and die from it in 6 weeks from now, why waste the 6 weeks that I have? You see, there's a logic in my mind to it. But the truth of it is, there's so many promises of God in the Bible that are true. But you have to experience them to know it. Reading them, well, that's good. Believing them and experiencing them, that's the whole thing. The Bible says, taste and see that the Lord is good. We don't gain anything by reading a recipe. We gain things by having someone work that recipe out, make that meal or that dessert or whatever it is. And once you taste it, Then you know if it's good or bad. And that's what God wants for you. He wants you to taste and see that He is good, and to stay on point, that He gives real peace. Let's look at it again. Jesus said, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you." If you know anything about the life of Jesus, there's so many things we never see, like Him sinning, disobeying the Father, God's laws, as we do. But you never see Him worried. I mean, he has a busy life. Well, He's the Savior of the world. Crowds are always following Him, tugging on Him. But you never hear Him saying, "Oh, I'm busy, very busy." He is never worried. Well, that's what I was after, and I can't say that I've accomplished that in my life, especially in ministry, so much as Jesus did. But I can say, no matter how difficult the times may be, and they've been very difficult at times in my life, as they are in yours, but Christ keeps me stable so that we're not moved. The righteous, He says, shall not be moved. And the Apostle Paul said, when they were talking about how he was going to die, that none of these things move me. Another way to say it is that I'm not afraid. I'm at peace. That's what we are all looking for, and this is what Christ promises. It's found throughout the Bible. It says here again, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you." Then He goes on to say, "Not as the world gives." So the world does give some type of peace. I had a class I taught here for several years, and I called it Renewed. And we had people come and we had people go, but it was designed for people who have chronic issues with anxiety and depression. We had people that ranged from a lifetime. One student, she had a lifetime of chronic schizophrenia. And then we had others that had chronic history or a history of chronic panic attacks, anxieties, depression. And we had about a dozen who came faithfully. For all those years, they came every Saturday when I held the class. And I called it God's Answers for the 12 Principles, which also you can find on the website. I called it God's Answers for Anxiety, and the class was called Renewed. And even I was astonished at the results of that class. All I had was a Bible. I didn't have any psychology books, nothing. All I had, as a matter of fact, it was this Bible here. All I had was this Bible with me, brought it with me, bring out some principles, and the results were so dramatic that when I wrote my dissertation for my first doctorate, it was on that class. And the results that we got, the premise of my dissertation, which I called by the same title, God's Answers for Anxiety, the Bible, and Mental Health. That was my first dissertation for my first doctorate. And I was trying to write in such a way to say that we as preachers, the answers are right in front of us. First, we have to be convinced. I already am and was. Then we must convince the people. Then you have to be convinced that following Christ is truly the way, not a way. Jesus said, and it's in here in the 14th chapter, a little earlier, "I am the way, the truth, the life, and no man comes to the Father but by me." I shared with you, there's two options here with these verses, as there are with so many other verses. You believe them, or you don't. Me, I searched out. I did, a lot of thinking and praying and so forth. But I took that leap. I took that step to walk with Christ, again, 43 years ago. And my wife did as well, by the way. And never has there been a day, ever, that I've regretted it. Well, I have regrets in my life, but not when it was coming to accepting Christ and living for Christ and knowing God, which we're going to get to that in just a second. So the world gives a type of peace. Well, for these students that I had, for myself as well, when I was young, they hand you a medication, that's fine. It's it's a proper thing for doctors to do. But if you've ever been on some of these either antipsychotic, which is an extreme case, or psychotropic drugs, the side effects are awful. So one part of you is sort of at peace, but not the rest. When Christ gives you peace, you are at peace. People will be, first of all, let me say it this way. After I received Christ, when those who knew me before, my behavior, my manner, the way I thought and so on, they actually were stunned, not even knowing what happened. I remember one of my friend's mothers saying to me, "You look different." Now, I hadn't done a thing. My hair was cut the same way. I weighed the same. Nothing about me was actually different. She says, "There's something different about you. Did you cut your hair?" I said, "No." "Did you lose weight?" I said, "No." And she kept going through these things. She couldn't put her finger on it, but what the difference was Christ. And that's when I told her. I said, well, I received Christ as my Savior. Usually, the response is perplexion, because people can't relate their experience in church. Maybe that has inoculated them, given the vaccine, in a manner of speaking, vaccinated them against hearing the full-blown disease of Christianity, of Christ. And so that was the change. Christ came into my life, so much so that others were recognizing it. I was just different. Well, Christ doesn't give peace the way this world gives peace. Some of you, or some of us, I should say, even when we hear the best of our representatives and leadership in the world, are not convinced that this is the whole thing. But Christ, you can trust. He said, I don't give you peace the way the world gives peace. He said, I give you my type of peace. So let not your heart be troubled, and don't let it be afraid. That's the first thing I want to say to you on the word panic. Now, if you have a Bible and it's open, so come with me to the book of Proverbs in chapter 3, where we're going to see another verse that has to do with us being free from fear, or free from, in this case I use the word panic, but it don't have to really be panic, just a sense of, which I think is worse, just constant anxiety hanging over your head. In Proverbs chapter 3, at verse 6, it tells us, in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Now, what does that have to do with peace? Well, I always tell people there's two roads in life, according to the Bible. God's way, which has its own set of difficulties to live as a Christian in this world. And then there's a road that is outlined here in the Bible. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7 that it leads to destruction. I mean, ultimate, not just physical death, a final death. In that place that Jesus elaborates on, and the Bible elaborates on, as known as hell. Two ways you can go, and both are difficult. The way of the wicked, the way of the transgressor is hard, it says in the scriptures. Well, so is the way of following Christ, but one has a great reward to it and benefits, and the other, it's just constant turmoil. So in verse 6 of Proverbs chapter 3, it says to acknowledge him. What does that mean? Well, prayer. Asking God for direction. God, what am I supposed to do? God, where am I supposed to go? And the Bible also tells us that if we ask, we lack wisdom and we ask for it, he will give it to us. That God is very giving. And it's his nature. You know, some years ago, this was right when my wife and I had received Christ, and we were water baptized together as well. An illustration was given to us in a study that we were attending at the time of drawing up a list of the things that are most important to you. And so there was a project to do at this retreat or seminar or whatever it was. And so people did it, and then they were to read it after they listed 10 things that were very important in their lives. And the teacher asked, now, where is God on that list? And you know, it shocked everybody, because if it wasn't everybody, it certainly was almost everybody, didn't have God on the list. Here's the real crux of the matter. If we're not seeking after God, in Jeremiah he tells us to call upon him, he will answer us and show us great and mighty things that we don't know anything about, that we know not of. The answer to peace, to walking on the right path, I mean, God directing your steps in everything that you do, who you're supposed to marry and how to conduct yourself in business and so on, is found here in seeking God. And we seek him through prayer and the scriptures. And there's other things too, but we'll leave it with the two basics, prayer and the Bible. And you seek him with all your heart. That's acknowledging him. Then he begins to direct your paths. He leads you. He guides you. Remember, Christ said, I am the good shepherd. And he leads you. He won't lead you into something that's bad for you. He won't lead you into something that is wrong. And therefore, you have peace. And further, by knowing that it's God, the God of the universe, the one and only true God, knowing that, by experience, knowing that he's leading you, guiding you, you're at peace. Now let's go back to this coronavirus. Let's look at the whole situation in the world that both rational and informed people know about, the dangers we're facing. Yet there is this unearthly peace that God gives to those that have put their trust in him. In other words, you make up a list of priorities, what's very important to you. If God's not on it, well, let me say it this way. Even the best of people, I've told the people I pastor here that I would never intentionally let them down. But I'm sure there have been occasions when I have let them down. Why? Because I can fail. God can't fail. That's the beauty of it. Because he's God. He can't fail. And when you seek him and you acknowledge him, and he's first, everything starts to fall in place. And even in the world, which we have now, of turmoil and stress, and it's just so hostile. You know, look at the social media. For those of us who are on it, you have to have some thick skin to stay on there. I wouldn't want to tell you the things that I've been called and things that have been said to me. And there is some humor in it. Sometimes it was by people who were once my friends. They felt it necessary to just release their hostility, not only at me, but on me. Well, whatever, as the kids say, whatever. I have Christ, and Christ is my stability, and he can be yours as well. And if he is yours, then rely on him. I sang for you yesterday, lead me to the rock that is higher than I, from Psalm 61. Even David, King David, who was a godly and righteous man, had his moments of being overwhelmed. Christians are not, A, perfect, B, they don't live in a perfect world. Therefore, things don't go the way we want them to so many times. And we get overwhelmed and stressed. But we are able to go to the rock whom we have received, to Christ, and enjoy the peace that he's promised. So that's Proverbs chapter 3, verse 6. Back in the gospel, according to Matthew this time, at verse 17, and I'm speaking about panic and how to overcome it, but the word panic was just convenient because that was already the title of these messages. I'm really talking about fear in general. In Matthew chapter 17, at verse 20, we find why we fail, especially when we think we're seeking after God, and then the scriptures, which I told you Sunday, I believe, it's canon is the word. The canon of Scripture, 66 books, is finished. It's closed. And canon comes from a word meaning reed, and reeds were used to measure. So we measure ourselves by the book, by the Bible. So Jesus cast out some devils from this young boy who was tormented by them. And we should keep in mind also the Bible clearly indicates there are spiritual beings in the world. One, Satan, and then his underlings and those that work with him, evil spirits. But thank God, God is still God, and the angels outnumber them anyway. But just to alert you to that, devils can possess people. But here Jesus cast them out. The disciples tried it, and they couldn't. They didn't. Jesus came along, and he did. So they asked him, why could not we cast them out? At verse 19. And Jesus said unto them, because of your unbelief. Now remember, they were trying, but they failed. And now they're saying, hey, you did it like that. Why could we not do it? And they were trying it. Let me give you a kind of a allegory. It's a lot like going to church and why some of you have stopped altogether. Things were said and promised and so on, but they never came to pass. For those of you who perhaps still attend services on a Sunday, you do it maybe perhaps as I did, out of tradition. It's a habit. A good habit, but it's a habit. But nothing really happens. Jesus, he says, because of your unbelief, for verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, remove from here to there, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. I should finish the story at verse 21, where it's written, howbeit this kind, this boy that was demon-possessed, goeth not out but by prayer and fasting. So there is an addendum to the statement made in verse 20. But Jesus often talked about faith without amending it with fasting and prayer. There has to be a decision to believe. Faith is, again, I shared this with you Sunday, it's not unreasonable people. As you know, I've had atheists say this to me. I've been in discussions with them as well. They're not always too polite. Yeah, you're kind of childish, and what they're trying to say is I'm stupid. And believe me, I am anything but stupid. And for those of us who have known Christ, what we have and the choice that we have made is a whole lot smarter than the choices so many people that I've seen, known, talked to, and some that I've dealt with, smarter than them. Anyway, when I read this verse and Jesus talks about nothing being impossible, to this day, I'm still challenged by that. But it is what it says. But let me concentrate on the unbelief, the lack of faith. So they are even trying, as I would illustrate by saying, some people who just go to church, whatever that may mean. And nothing really happens, so you go because there's a reverence for God, let's say. A respect for God, a respect for his being. But your life, now I don't have the time to go through the many, many answers to prayer that I say I've received, I have, but that this church that I've pastored has seen God do things that, well, I wouldn't go as far as saying they were impossible, but they were not probable. And as long as we kept pursuing God, even though he made us wait a bit, sometimes more than we wanted to wait, God always, always, always came through. Always. I have not known a period ever. I've known a lot of testings, but never a period when God failed me, ever. And that's the truth. But what that comes from is a decision to believe. It's an act of the will. Not against the evidence, not against being unreasonable, irrational, or sometimes just foolish, acting foolishly and saying it's the Holy Spirit. We've all seen a lot of that as well. It's a decision to believe in God even when things are the most difficult, even when you're being tried and tested, even if the facts seem to speak otherwise, you continue to believe in God and in His Word by an act of the will. And this is how fear is overcome. I just spoke a few weeks ago, and this was, we streamed it. They're archived on both Facebook and YouTube, so you could find it. I just forget which message it was in. But I said, it's not like the follower of Christ, the Christian, is without fear or without unbelief coming up against the mind or other things. It's just that your faith rises up and overcomes it. That's the difference between champions and people who are never champions, people who are extremely proficient and those that are not proficient, just in life in general. But in Christ, it's taking the fear that's there and overcoming it by faith in His Word, by an act of the will that is resolute to never give up, to never give in, and to say, God, you promised me peace, and it's peace I am going to have. That's the type of faith that Jesus promoted. Jesus said once, "The kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force." Lots of ideas of what that means, but let me just give you the most common interpretation. You'll see people, Jesus went to Nazareth where He spent his boyhood, and couldn't do a miracle there. Well, not that He couldn't, He didn't, because they didn't believe Him. But He was doing it every place else. The fault wasn't in Jesus. The fault was in the people. And we come to Christ, we must be adamant that no matter what, I will continue to believe. I will believe what this book says. And so you read it and you study it. And again, I've said atheist. That's a more protracted case. Even average people come against you and they say this and they say that and all of that. But you're adamant that you're going to stay faithful to Christ and you're going to believe His Word. And that's when you see God work. I'm not asking you to trust in man. I don't trust people too easily. I've been burned too many times. I've been let down many, many times by flesh and blood, but never by God. Never. Not once, not ever. And I don't expect from here to eternity to ever be let down by God. And the only thing I pray is that God don't let me let you down. In any case, we overcome fear by accepting the peace that Christ offers us, by acknowledging Him and seeking Him first. We also find it by never conceding our will to believe anything that contradicts the words of Christ and, of course, the words of the apostles and the prophets. Come with me, again, if you have a Bible open, to the book of Job. No one individual in the Scriptures is accented with as many problems as Job. So he becomes the premier example of a person with all types of problems. He lost his children, lost all his businesses, his wealth. He lost his health. Then his wife comes along and says, you should just curse God and die, because obviously you've offended Him, which wasn't the case. The righteous do suffer sometimes for causes other than their own sin. This was Job. But look at this verse here. In Job chapter 22, at verse 21, it says, acquaint now thyself with Him and be at peace. He's talking about God. Acquaint now thyself with Him and be at peace. Thereby good shall come unto thee. That's the King James Bible, which we use here. That's just a great word. Get acquainted with God. I don't know that people use that expression much anymore, and I don't recall it's been used much with me in conversations, but I'm asked fairly frequently, do I know a certain person? Which is the same as saying, am I acquainted with them? So sometimes I am, and sometimes I'm not. When I'm not acquainted with them, I don't know who they are. I said, no, I don't know. It doesn't ring a bell. I don't think I know them. People sometimes are misled to say, well, yeah, I know God. But if you're not reading what the Scriptures say, well, how can you? because this is his book. God wrote it. Again, using men, about 40 of them, but he wrote it. And he reveals who he is. He says who he is. He says what he's going to do. The beginning here, here's where we are here now. There's the end. He explains it all in these scriptures, in the Bible. And then we hear these words here in Job 22:21. Acquaint now thyself with him. Be at peace. You know, I know that's what you're looking for, just the same way I was. I am blessed to have been called by God to be in the ministry. Again, not to go into this story, but I knew it from a child. Even before I knew God, God knew me. And though I violated him pretty good early on, God still had a purpose for my life. I was speaking to be a minister, speaking to a young man a few months back, and he was sharing about career choices and, what does he want to be? He's in his early 20s. And he says, I don't want to be in my 40s one day and realize, I hate my job and I missed the opportunity or opportunities in life. And I said to him, well, if you could find a job that matches your gifts and talents, you've got it made. Many people go to work, and rightfully so, because they have to make a living. You've got to make money to live. But they don't really love their job or enjoy their job. I told him the truth, what I'm telling you now. I said, if I could do my life all over again, obviously there's things I would change. But I wouldn't change my calling. If I had to do my life all over again, I'd still be a preacher. And that's, with all the difficulties that come in the ministry, that's a great asset to have. Why? I decided to get acquainted with God, to do things his way and not to impose on him my will, to say, you're going to do things my way, because God doesn't negotiate. Do it my way, God says, basically in the Bible, and you'll be at peace. There we find it coming from a man who was exceptionally troubled. Acquaint now thyself with him and be at peace. One more verse, and we're finished for tonight. It's in the first epistle of Peter, the Apostle Peter. It's a short little verse. I'm going to leave you with this. I'll read verse 6 as well as verse 7, but verse 7 is the one I want to give you. We're told in verse 6 to humble yourself. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. His timetable, not yours. Casting all your care. This word in Greek means anxiety. Casting all your anxiety upon him, for he careth for you. When I first received Christ, one of the things that was on my mind the most is I didn't want to be seen carrying a Bible. And so I would come from work, and at that time I had a job at the YMCA, pretty young, still looking for my way in life. I would go to the back of the bus on my way home, on the days that I took the bus, and I would open up this Bible way in the back because I didn't want anybody to see me. Well, there came a point in time when the Lord, just put it to me, and he says, are you ashamed of me? And I said, well, no. And from that point on, I have conducted myself in such a manner, not trying to be obnoxious, don't get me wrong, or arrogant. I'm not ashamed of Jesus Christ. I'm not ashamed of what I do. And I didn't go into full-time ministry. In other words, I was in ministry, but I was working a secular job before I went into full-time ministry. I was just not ashamed. I wasn't ashamed to take my Bible and put it right over there where all my co-workers could see it or carry it with me. Well, if Jesus is not ashamed to be with me, why should I be ashamed to be with him? If you want real peace, let me give you a little hint, some advice. We live in an age where everybody's either coming out of the closet or they're just simply saying whatever's on their mind, and they're just, as again, I said, that it could be a very hostile environment. It could be very, can lack decorum. It can lack so many things that in a polite company or society you would have, but that's long gone in the world in general. And why should I be ashamed of what God wrote in the book? I didn't write it. Why should I be ashamed of Jesus Christ? The Apostle Paul said, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to them that believe, to the Jew first, and then also to the Gentile, which would be the rest of the world, which would be you and me, well, most of us anyway." So let me leave you with this. We're promised peace, but we must pursue God with all that we have in the Scriptures and in prayer. We must never concede the will to defeat as we walk in Christ, no matter how hard it is. We must become ever acquainted with God. God is eternal. There's never going to be a time when we know everything about God, now or ever. And then we need to cast our cares upon Him. What's troubling you today? We're all in a difficult place. We're all in a difficult position. But what's troubling you today? Beyond this virus and all of what we're reading and hearing, it could be just family issues, your marriage, your children, the death in the family. It could be so many, many things that goes along with our time here on earth as human beings. And here we have the ultimate solution to real peace is to give it to God. And when I say give it to God, or the Bible says give it to God, it means you actually give it to Him. You walk away from it. And from that moment on, you say, it's in God's hands. By the way, when we pray God's will be done, God's will is always the best and it's always good. That we have to trust Him for. Do you have Christ in your life or religion? Even the Christian religion, is it just a tradition, just something that you do? Or can you say that I have known whom I have believed? Do you know Christ? You can ask Him into your heart, the way I did in my bedroom many long years ago, all by myself. Christ, Jesus, please just come into my heart, be my Lord, be my Savior. That's what I did. You can do that right now. Lord, I just pray those who have watched tonight, some of whom know you and some who don't. But we all want peace, and we're looking for it in the wrong places. We're looking for it in people who fail us. Even good people fail us. We're looking for it in the world, and all we see is turmoil. We're looking all over the place. We're looking for retirement. We're looking for the beach, whatever. All temporary. God, you give a peace that no man can give and no man can take away. And I just pray for those watching, those who will be watching, that they find the peace that I have found and many, many, many others. You give a peace the world cannot give, but the world cannot take it away. God, just bless all those who are watching tonight. Give them hope in what seems to be a hopeless world. And I'm glad that you were with us tonight, and I pray that you can be back here again. As I said earlier, we're looking at an extended period of time of sequestration. So tune in. Next time we'll be here is Sunday morning at 11 a.m. And we'll continue on with the preaching and teaching of God's Word. Thanks for being with us tonight, and I hope that you gain something from this. God bless.